Alright guys, I'm back after a couple of months of not posting any videos on this channel, and I'm back with an insane video about neurology, and the majority of traders need to know this if they want to become profitable in the long run. So let's get right into it. So what we're going to talk about today is the triune brain, and a lot of people don't know what this is, and believe me, this is so incredibly important. You have to know this if you want to become profitable at trading. So let's break that down first. What even is the triune brain? Our brain is divided into three parts: the neocortex, the limbic system, it's written down here in Dutch, but that's limbic system, and the lizard brain. All right, so what are these responsible for? The neocortex is also called the human brain. It's responsible for rational thinking. The limbic system is responsible for our emotional response, and the lizard brain is responsible for our instincts. So why is this the human brain? So let's take the example of a mouse trap. Let's say you're hungry, a mouse is hungry, but let's say you both see cheese laying in a mouse trap. You decide to skip out on it because you know it'll kill you, but the mouse decides to go for it, and it'll die because it's not capable of thinking of the consequences. So rational thinking is only something that we as humans do. The rat is thinking, or the mouse is thinking with his limbic system. He's hungry, he wants to have food, and that's why he goes for the mouse trap. All right, so let's get down a little bit more into that, and let's break that down in terms of trading. How does that work? We often associate losing with painful and winning with euphoria. Why do we do that? It's just something that we have been associated with our entire lives. Every time you lose a soccer match, they'll tell you do better next time, or that's unfortunate. If you fail a math test, they'll tell you, okay, that's okay, too bad, unfortunately, you got to do it again, etc. So for some reason, we started to associate losing as something painful and winning as something good, something euphoric, meaning that we're always going to strive towards winning. We're always going to want to win more than we lose. Makes sense, right? We always do, even in a casino, if we're playing football, any other sport, doesn't really matter. So what we do is if we take that to our amygdala, we save these emotions as painful or euphoric. So as soon as we win, we save that in our amygdala as being something euphoric. As soon as we lose, we save that in our amygdala as something painful. Our amygdala is a little dot right there in your brain that is basically responsible for action reaction. What I mean by that is, let's say you see a spider, you associate that spider with fear, you pull away your hand because you associate it with fear, and you now basically train your brain to associate or to avoid spiders because you associate them with fear. The same with losing and trading. You associate losing with painful, you want to avoid pain, so what do? You look for ways to avoid losing. Okay, this is where it gets difficult. So because we avoid losing, because we see that as something painful, what are we going to do? We're going to strive to something that allows us to win more positions. We're going to strive for a high win rate. We want to have a high win rate because why? Because that way we are taking less losses and we are not experiencing as much pain. And the number one function of our brain is to avoid pain. So because we're going to go for a high win rate, there's a couple of consequences with that, because avoiding losses to create a high win rate lowers the frequency. What do I mean by that? Well, let's draw out a chart real quick. And let's say I want to take this long continuation, but I also know that there's imbalance here, that there's liquidity here, trendline liquidity there, and I also know that the weekly time frame is actually bearish. I have two options right now. I could either go for that, take that trade, or I could try to stack my probabilities to have a higher chance of winning this trade. So I could aim for a higher chance to win that trade. Sounds good, right? Wrong. Okay, why? Because a higher chance to win that trade is not necessarily a good thing. Because in doing so, we might miss out on a lot of trades, right? These might not be the highest probability trades, but we are missing out on wins right now. So what happens is by striving for that high win rate, we lower the frequency. So we lower the amount of trades we take every year. That results to you becoming dependent on either A, multi-time frame analysis, because you have to have a high win rate, or B, becoming dependent on 1 or 2 setups a week or 1 or 2 setups a month, because you only have a set amount of trades, because you're aiming for that high win rate, meaning you can only take the A+ setups, meaning you become dependent on just a few trades. that puts you on high alert. You cannot afford to miss that setup, because if you do miss it, you'll feel like shit. You'll be like, damn, shit, I missed my one setup a week. So what does that do? That messes with your neurotransmitters, adenosine specifically. We're going to talk about that in just a second. Let me quickly recap this. Okay, high win rate, meaning you're going to aim for a high win percentage, meaning you're going to want to avoid losses. Why? Because we see losses as something painful and we want to avoid pain. We like winning, we see it as something euphoric, so we're going to strafe towards winning. Okay, avoiding losses to create a high win rate lowers the frequency. Why? Because you're aiming for A+ setups, so you're missing out on all the B or C+ setups, and now you're only going for that win rate with that strategy with a 60% win rate, but it only has 10 trades a year maybe. You become dependent on your analysis, because it's usually multi-time frame analysis, putting you on high alert because you cannot afford to miss your 5 setups a month, and that messes up your neurotransmitters. So let me get into this part. Before I do that, let me mention one more thing. Why is a low frequency bad? Okay, let's talk about that. 10 trades a year with a 60% win rate and a 1 to 3 RR. How much does that make us? That makes us, let's see, 6 times 3. So 6 times 3, that's 18. And then 4 times minus 1, that is -4. 18 minus 4 is 14R. Okay, pretty shit year. Now if we do 500 trades in a year with a 35% win rate, we come out way more profitable. Why? Because now the sum is, okay, let's do 35% of 500, do that times 3, and then deduct the remaining amount as losses, and you'll be up probably around 100R or so. We could do that real quick. We can do 500 times, let's see, we set 35% win rate. We have 175 wins times 3, 525R. Then obviously we also have 325 losses, so negative 325, putting us at 200R with a way lower win rate. Most traders never get to that point. Why? Because they associate pain with losing. They're going to strafe towards that high win rate, and they're going to become dependent on a few setups and a complex analysis. Even though we're way more profitable with the lower win rate. Okay, now I wrote down that messes up your adenosine, and this is where the majority of traders get bothered, and this is where the majority of traders get fucked over basically. Because adenosine, for those of you who don't know, is your sleep regulator. Basically meaning that having a healthy adenosine level basically means that you're having healthy sleep. Okay, why does your adenosine get messed up? Because you're on high alert, and that messes with your cortisol. And cortisol is responsible for stress management, stress regulations, your stress hormone basically. The more stressed out you are, the worse your sleep is. The worse your sleep is, the more stressed out you are. We all know this. If we're stressed out, we cannot sleep. If we're really, really sleepy, but we know that we can't get sleep, we're going to stress out because now we don't have enough sleep. You'll be stressed if you have to wake up at 4 a.m. and you're still awake at 2 a.m. And you'll be stressed if you can't sleep because of, for example, trading. All right, so what does that lead to? Now you're sleeping like shit. Even though you don't entirely notice it, you're sleeping like shit. And that leads to my next neurotransmitter, endorphins. And endorphins, what they are, they basically make you feel confident. They make you suppress your pain. Why? As soon as you do any form of physical exercise, you trigger what is called endorphins, which are responsible for suppressing your pain and making you feel a little bit more confident. Okay, so if you're sleeping like shit, you're obviously not going to the gym as much, or you're not going on as high of an intensity as you should, because you slept like shit and you're stressed out. You're not really feeling it. You might skip out on the gym. You might skip out on going on a run, which blocks the creation of endorphins. Why is that important? Well, because endorphins are responsible for managing serotonin levels. Serotonin is your emotional stability. You want to have a stable serotonin level, because if you have a stable serotonin level, your emotions will be less susceptible to mood swings, and you'll be calm. You'll basically be like Tommy Shelby, whatever. You don't really give a fuck if you have a really stable emotional level. if you have really stable serotonin. Antidepressants, for example, what they do is they stabilize the serotonin intake. All right, so endorphins have the same effect. The more you work out, the more stable your emotions become. All right, this is why people say, like, after they go through a breakup, go to the gym, because it suppresses pain, creates endorphins, and it stabilizes your serotonin level. Why is serotonin important? Because if your serotonin level is unstable, you're pretty much unable to learn, feel, and remember things properly. The thing is, people usually go into the state of learning when they're emotionally unstable. Why? Because they just took a few losses, they hopped strategy for the 16,000th time in a row, and they feel like shit. So that's when they go into the learning phase. Now, let me ask you, if you ever lost a family member, is that when you go and pick up guitar? No. Why? Because you know that you're not capable of learning it properly once your feelings and your learning capability are not all there. And the reason for that is because once you lost a family member, your serotonin level is basically very unstable. Okay? So what is the fix for that? It's fairly simple. We now understand that our serotonin level gets fucked up by chasing that high win rate and by going for that complex analysis. There's two things: simplicity, frequency. And then the third thing, actually, feedback. These two things, really important. So you want to have something that's simple and something that you can execute frequently. Okay, why? Because that way you can give yourself feedback. So let's go back to that amygdala real quick. I told you about being afraid of spiders, right? If you're afraid of a spider, it'll save that in your amygdala and it'll make you basically pull your hand away once you see a spider. Okay, if I put you in a room with 1,000 spiders for 30 days and you notice that they're not doing any harm, your save file will basically change that perspective. It'll now no longer be afraid of spiders. It's also called exposure therapy. In terms of trading losses, if you see that you're executing a strategy and that you're coming out profitable, you will now no longer associate losing with pain. Okay? So that's the key. The key is to get a lot of feedback telling the amygdala, like, hey, it's okay to lose because we still are profitable even if we lost 20 times in a row. Okay? This is where data comes in. And data can only be gathered with simplicity. Because if you have 6 different time frames and 100 different variables, it's going to be impossible to frequently collect data. And data is what you need to give yourself feedback, to basically give yourself, or to train the amygdala to no longer associate losing with painful. And that is the ultimate fix to all of this. And what does data look like? Well, let me show you. For example, 1,000 trades telling you exactly what your edge is, telling you exactly how much you can lose, how much you can win, how long you're in a trade, how long you're in a losing trade, stuff like that. That is what you need, and that's a key part of trading. Now, obviously, this is a little bit short. This is like a 10-15 minute video about this subject. We can go a lot deeper into this, but this is the basic of why the majority of traders are not making it in trading. It is 90% psychology. That's a fun thing to say, but you should know why it's 90% psychology. Like, what is the actual reason behind that? And this is the actual reason behind that. So if you want to know more about this, DM me on Discord, on Instagram. Doesn't really matter. The links are both in the description. If you want to join our community, check the link down below. Thank you guys for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.